Well, everybody, we've got a packed presentation today. We're going to be talking about how you can utilize field data within BIM 360. Talking about going from the office to the field, and then again, field to the office. So, today's agenda is really about diving into, what makes it beneficial to you guys, what makes it beneficial to people out in the field, whether you're trying to push data again or receive data. So we're going to be talking about that, integrations. There's some really key things that we have to talk about on how the data actually plays and what types of data we can push. So we're going to cover all that, layout, drone scanning, document management, PDFs, CAD, Revit. We're going to talk about all this today, and how it all feeds into this big ecosystem. We're also going to be talking about what it does to those file formats, the version control and why it's all important. Utilizing field data, there's been a long history of ways that we've shared data, right? So we've pushed it traditionally through thumb drives or glorified FTP sites or what have you, but always you get the file, final, and then a date, and then that one gets outdated, and there's no way to know which one is current. So we're going to kind of cover what makes this platform unique and how we can take advantage of it out in the field. We're also going to be diving into the mobile access component, which is huge. And then again, we'll have a Q&A session, but we'll be taking some of those questions as we kind of go through this presentation as well. So with that said, we wanted to talk about a little bit about who we are, right? A little housekeeping here. So if you aren't familiar with Topcon Solutions, we are the retail division of Topcon Positioning Systems. If you aren't familiar with the term Topcon Positioning Systems, think of Topcon Global. We are the complete solutions provider, whether it's scanners, total stations, and field equipment, right? Your tape, machetes, whatever you have, hard hats, vests. As you can see in this photo here, we've got quite the showroom, and this is all across the country, right? We've got all these different locations. So we focus on everything from in the AEC space, whether it be the design software, how to use the data out in the field, and other softwares as well, as you can see, Bluebeam as well. We have industry-leading training and technical support. My co-presenter today, Dave Campbell, is a member of that team, specializing in pretty much all things BIM, SIM, and construction. He's kind of an all-around guru there. But our team is comprised of people all across the country, focusing on not just individual point products, but how the products interact with other softwares and workflows and components and hardware. So we really are the field-to-finish solution there. We not only just support individual pieces, but again, the whole workflow. So you got a big piece of equipment down on a site, we can come out there and troubleshoot it and troubleshoot everything going into it as well. We have local service and repair, and what I mean by local, we'll dive into the next slide here in just a second. But just think about trouble sending stuff off and trying to get repairs and loaners and all that sort of stuff. We literally have local places, and we'll show that in the next slide. But the wide range of everyday field supplies and accessories can be found at our locations. So with that, we have 13 locations. We operate in many states and cities, but our brick and mortar locations are in 13 specific locations. We cover 20 states plus Washington, D.C. Our division has about 180 employees in it, always growing and expanding here. Hopefully, one day we'll have the whole U.S. map there, and beyond that, the world, right? But you can go into any one of these locations and chat with local professionals. So speaking of local professionals, as I've stated, Dave Campbell, he is our application specialist for the day, our all-around guru, and pretty much everything and anything. So if you got a question, lay it on him. Myself, my name is Joseph Whitney. I'm a regional account executive. I cover a majority of Eastern United States for Autodesk software, focusing on BIM, SIM, and pretty much everything in between.
Right. So thank you very much for that introduction, Joey. Dude, I always feel like the first part of the webinar, we kind of break it down and start talking about where we're going to go with this, but it's always an interesting kind of transition, right, dude? I think you did very well there. Thank you for that. And by the way, for any of you who do not know, if you have not been on a webinar with Joey and I before, we do like to approach our webinars in a little bit of a different way, in the sense of we're going to be talking through a lot today, and really making this kind of conversation about how we can utilize the data, what environment can we place it into so that everyone involved has access and updated, kind of, as Joey was saying there, version controlled access to that data. So getting into it, the first thing that we really need to talk about here, Joe, is what is
What
BIM 360, right?
exactly. So now that we've rushed through the introduction, let's dive into this fun conversation here, guys. So if you aren't familiar with BIM 360, you know, maybe you've missed the marketing emails from Autodesk or whatnot, but BIM 360 is kind of revolutionary in what it does. It is a common data environment, and we've heard the term common data environment for years, right? So, our survey team has a common data environment, our design team has a common data environment, our construction team has a common data environment, but how are they common data environments if they're so siloed? Autodesk approach with BIM 360 has been, you know, a lot different, right? It's all been about connecting common data environments and kind of being that sole source of information, being that general file repository, because it does stuff that no other platform does. It's doing your version controlling, so we can see how files have changed between each thing, and we'll go into that in a little bit. It's handles pretty much any file format you can think of. It has viewers for pretty much any file format you can think of. It has a communication engine in it. It has a markups engine in it. So we really like to think about it as the true collaboration component, right? So, common data environment's great. You got files in one place, but what happens if you have a question about something, or you have an issue, or you need to assign a task? Well, what do? You go out to your email and you assign something, or you send somebody some information, and that becomes disconnected from this whole workflow. How do you track all this information? And BIM 360 does stuff a little bit different here, because we're actually taking all of that component and piling into one system, and really focusing on the whole workflow from design to engineering, to coordination, O&M, commissioning, layout, production planning, back to your ERP systems, what have you. And we realize that it's not going to fit everybody's existing systems perfectly, but what it does provide is an underpinning called Forge, which is just a series of APIs that allows us to talk to pretty much any platform you can think of, any device or any technology you're using. We can figure out a way to communicate using the Forge APIs to push and pull data, and do some remarkable things, like others in the industry have done, like JE Dunn has done, tremendous stuff where they've connected their estimation database to their models, and every time a model updates, it ties back to their estimation database. There's a lot of different unique things that people are doing, solving unique problems rather, per company. And we understand that everybody's going to be different, have their own tech stack. But if you want to find out more information about connecting that data, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to have that conversation as well.
Definitely. And I think that's really been a big focus for 2020, as well as, moving into 2021, is connecting construction, right? And we wanted to focus this webinar on utilizing that field data. And of course, we have to, talk about the common data environment, because that's where a lot of that data is going to be hosted, as Joey was talking about. And in order to utilize that data appropriately, we have to, be, I would say, comfortable with the fact that it is hosting our documents, and that we have the most up-to-date version, right? We have that kind of trust in that environment to know that we are up to date, we're looking at those documents, and then can everyone access it, right? So the first part of this, being one of the biggest parts here, for many of you who have gotten into BIM 360, for those of you who are just getting into BIM 360, the base of it, right? The base of the BIM 360 pyramid that I like to kind of think about here is docs. It's all based off of docs. And essentially with BIM 360 docs, this is where you're going to get your controlled publishing, your viewing and sharing of information, your document control and versioning for all file types, so your 2D and 3D or the PDFs, right? We're going to be able to perform design reviews with 2D and 3D, and we can also compare those documents. So we can place markups on there, but we can do that versioning comparison with a simple click of a button, okay? It allows us to manage our contract documentation and track our project activity. So that's another big one, right? Not just the fact of having the models there. If we need to see specs, if we need to see our contract docs, if we need to see submittals, you know, RFIs, if we need to see how, let's say we want to track our construction process itself as things are going onto the site, as they are, you know, assemblies are being finished, right? If we want to track that data, that's really where, you know, BIM 360 starts to shine, right? Because it's not, again, going back to that statement, it's not all about the models, but also that metadata that comes with it. And, you know, in terms of the RFIs, the submittals, we all know there's so much that goes into a construction process that, again, docs is that kind of baseline of holding all of that data. Now, another great thing about this is making that data available for anyone else, right? So that's where the iOS and Android apps also come into play with an offline sync. So if we do need to take that data onto our mobile device and go out to a site that does not have that wireless signal, we still have access to that documentation, to the models, to any of that workflow that we still may need.
Exactly right. And you know, we think about construction a little bit differently. You know, when you're on the job site, you're not thinking about BIM, and that term BIM 360 has kind of been a misnomer. But we handle 2D perfectly, and it provides the remote viewing, as you said, on the iOS and Android apps, which, you know, for more or less, you know, I guess for better or worse, right? 2D is still viewable. It doesn't force us all to 3D like one day we'd all want, but allows us to do tremendous things with it, right? So you were talking about RFIs and issues and as well, but you can do that from the mobile device as well. It's not just, you know, log into your computer and, oh, I can view sheets on here, but you can actually interact with that documentation and have a full communication, and you know, address issues and take photos as they're really happening on the job site, not have to write notes and go back to your office. I think that's been the biggest game changer for all of this.
Dude, I do too. I completely agree. Now, going back to that kind of previous point though of, you know, 2D and 3D. Now, looking at the model viewer in BIM 360, I think that is a huge kind of component to, of course, you know, making these data sets navigable, right? And then also helping with understanding. I think a big portion or a big thing of our industry, that part of our industry that's overlooked a lot of times is visualization, right? If you can help someone visualize how this connection needs to be put up, or how this brace needs to be mounted, or you know, anything like that, if we can
Oh,
really,
supplemental install information, essentially.
yes,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
perfect.
exactly, we can connect this all together, right? We have the hyperlinks inside of BIM 360. I mean, if you're sectioning, if you're doing your call outs, anything like that, of course, when you take that Revit model or what have you and push that up to BIM 360, a lot of those connections are going to stay. But the another beautiful thing about this, right? We're going to get into, you know, creating shared views and things like that here in a little bit. But, you know, if we need to essentially help our field teams navigate to this data and help visualize how these assemblies are going to be built, or how, you know, these sub assemblies are going to be assembled, you know, it's a great process, again, when we can share all of that data in one place, right? And again, that visualization portion, I think that's a really also another big kind of push to really helping everybody, you know, get into this this common data environment, in the sense of going from that 2D to kind of 3D and BIM or IFC, whatever it
Well,
is, but being able to navigate that and see exactly how it is.
yeah, I agree. Why don't we dive in and show people the mobile application of Docs
Yeah.
and how it actually ties back in?
Yes, yes, yes. I know I'm spending a lot of time talking about this, but essentially you'll see here that with the mobile application, you still have navigation capabilities to any project that you're hosting in BIM 360. Here you're going to see your documents, downloads, issues. We have access to our checklist, the RFI, submittals, some daily logs. We'll
And
go
this
ahead
is
and get into it.
role and permission based, so it's based off of what you have access to.
Yes, exactly. That's another key portion to docs that we didn't really get into there, but all of those folders, each one of those, team spaces, whether it's going to be in the plans or your project files, which we'll get more into here in a second on kind of what they do, but you can specify who can get in what, who can see what, and what capabilities they have. If you don't want them to edit the model, you can set just view capabilities, things like that. Oh, I skipped right out of that. I apologize. So we're going to get back into this one. But one big portion I did want to talk about again, as we kind of get into this here, when we get into the documents, is you'll notice that each one of these has a little download symbol next to it, right? So that's another thought process here. If we do need to take these out and we know that we're not going to have any signal, we can download these models, but you're going to notice we have the 3D sheets, we have 2D sheets, so access to any one of those. Now, you're going to see a kind of switch here, right? When we switch over from the plans to the project files, as I was kind of stating earlier, they do have a different kind of function. So docs is also kind of spread out into two different ways. You have your plans section, which, oh geez, I keep trying to hit my dang zoom. I apologize, that's what it is. I'm trying to like zoom in and out of it. But essentially with your plan section, you're gonna see a lot that looks like this. You're gonna see your sheets that are broken out. If you have 2D and 3D sheets, if you have 3D views that you wanted to publish up, if you have 2D or 3D AutoCAD or Civil 3D files, anything like that, when you place that in, gosh dang, I keep clicking on it to keep playing. I must be clicking in the wrong area. I apologize. But essentially, you'll notice that it breaks those models down, and then you can navigate through each one of them in like a sheet kind of,
Yeah,
well,
it splits the views and sheets out of the model essentially. So if
yes.
you've published a DWG or a Revit file with views and sheets and all that stuff, it'll auto extract the sheets and treat them separately. And we'll have the 3D as well. So if you need to make markups on a 2D sheet, it'll take care of that information as well.
Yep.
That's what
And
you're trying
another,
to say, right? Sorry.
yes, exactly. No, dude, thank you. I'm stumbling through it this morning, but yes, that's exactly what I was trying to say. And then it also kind of, geez, Louise, I keep clicking in it, and it takes me out to the next one. But
Just let it run. Yeah.
yeah, I'll just let it run. There we go. But I wanted to also say it kind of takes us into another workflow conversation, right? If you need to break apart your sheets by level, right? If you want to do coordination by level or something like that, you can actually just put it right into that plan section, right? And it's going to break everything down for you. Now, the project files here is a little bit different. You'll notice, again, we still have the same download capabilities, but what we're going to see in the project files over the plan section is that these plan or the project files will be where the collaborated kind of live Revit models, the links, any workable AutoCAD models, that's where you're going to see that collaborative environment, right? So the other kind of side to docs, again, is hosting not just the construction documentation, everything like that, the 2D or 3D sheets, but also hosting the design models themselves. And then you can see that we can get right into these models. We can create issues. We can start that communication process. If we see that we have something wrong with the design, we can go ahead and create this issue, specify exactly what it is. If we have any photos, we can upload or take photos. So if you have your mobile device, you can go ahead and take a picture and assign it right with that issue, and then assign it to someone. This is a huge portion of that, metadata Joey and I were talking about, is specifying this task for a person. If you have the the locations and things like that built into your models, you can specify where this issue is, again, who it needs to be assigned to, what type of issue it is, whether it's a design, it's a coordination, it's an installation, anything like that. And then again, create that task or that issue that is tracked throughout the project. So what we're going to see with that is that, again, when you assign it, anyone can get into it and then look at that issue, and it's going to take them right to where that issue is. Once they reply to it, if they make the change to the model, they can go ahead and set that or reply and say, okay, this has been closed, or this has been approved, this is finished, and then we can track that progress to take that metadata. Now you're seeing here, we can also create RFIs. So this is all from that mobile application that we're talking about there. We're able to, again, create the same kind of process with an RFI. But also before the RFIs there, you guys saw we were also able to take length measurements, like distance measurements. And then we're also going to place some other markups and things like that. So it's really, again, going back to that metadata, right? We're able to keep everything in this one environment. And again, it's connected through whether you're in the mobile device or you're on your desktop, your laptop, what have you, it's all together.
You would think that I would, when recording this, type accurately, but seems I'm full of typos, man. It's
Oh,
great.
I feel like that happens to me all day, every day.
Oh yeah, yeah. But this is an important component, right? We talked about RFIs, and we'll dive a little bit more into this as we talk about the build component. But really, what we're able to do is do our punch walks in kind of a real-time fashion instead of waiting, to schedule somebody back on site and do, handle all this stuff. It's essentially notifying whoever we assign it to right then and there. We've had instances where by the time somebody was on the third floor, of a build out, they, were able to get the first, the electrician back on the first floor, adjusting stuff. They were already on site, and as they were creating all these issues, they were like, "Oh, I can fix this real quick." Went down, to the first floor and started taking care of things. Typically this is something that doesn't happen very quickly, but this connected construction environment that we're talking about really allows us and enables us to kind of take it a step further. And as you're seeing here, we can create markups, which is another huge thing, right? I don't always have an issue I want to assign to somebody, but I just, I got some, need to look more into this or figure out more information, or is this actually right, or whatever it is. You can create markups, simple, easy to use markups as well. So I
Yep.
really like that
I like
functionality.
that setting right up there at the top too. You kind of hovered over it for a second there, but there's a setting with these markups where you can specify whether you want this to be a private or a public markup. So
Yeah.
if you're walking around the field and you notice a few different things, you're walking around the site and you want to just take some markups for yourself to help you remember different things later. Maybe you want to go ahead and document it in the job trailer when you get back, or what have you. They can use that setting to, of course,
Specify.
specify. Yeah, good Lord, specify whether it's going to be a public so everyone can see it, or a private markup. Now, of course, the next. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I love that, man. I'm a I take notes on everything, so it's kind of like notes to yourself, that
Yes.
nobody else can see. That's a huge component for the way my brain works.
Oh, me too, man. It helps so much. Honestly, I've used it when I give myself a little to-do list. I'll use some text notes and just kind of place them on there. Like, I got to remember to do this. I got to remember to do that. Let's go ahead and make sure I do this. And I'm going to put a cloud around that if I got to change it. If I'm going in to look at what different things, maybe the architect has reviewed, and I know there are different things that I may need to still get to. It's nice that I can go ahead and get into it and see, and, kind of communicate that, but also, again, specifying just for myself, like what to do.
Well, there's a pretty awesome workflow there. So think about doing CA type work, and you've got to make notifications to yourself, right? So you can go out in the field, create these issues, assign them to yourself, and then use the Revit plugin for issues for BIM 360, and then actually make the changes that you've assigned yourself to in the field. It's pretty cool. I mean, obviously other people can assign you issues as well,
Yeah.
but within Revit itself, in Navisworks too, we can view those issues that you create in BIM 360.
Yes, that is another great feature that we really didn't touch on there. They just released it, I believe, a couple, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. But essentially, they did give us the access to, bring the issue engine into Revit or into Navisworks. So when you create that, it goes right in, and you can see exactly where that issue is in the model. It's awesome, awesome integration. That's a great workflow point, Joe.
It is, and it ties right back into what we're going to talk about here with design. Design isn't really thought of as a construction tool, but as we talk more and more about IPD and design build and all these different contract types for construction, design collaboration and is starting to happen at the same time as concurrent, it's concurrent engineering is happening at the same time.
Hmm.
Plus, we're also diving into um, coordination happening very, very fast. So how do you get the other teams involved? Design's been kind of a savior in that regard. It's definitely helped enable the communication and collaboration component.
I definitely agree, and I think that design kind of acts like that bridge um, of the kind of gap between design and construction, even though it is not, like Joey said, typically used in a construction type of environment unless you are design build focused. What we're seeing is design again kind of bridges that gap to say, okay, this is essentially this is the design model where we have it, right? In my mind, this is where construction teams can kind of step in and what we've had this problem in our industry in terms of, let's say, handover with the model itself, with the documentation, right, and that translation of data in that point of time, in terms of like detailing and modeling certain things for construction, right? And we see a lot of rework that happens right there in that translation time because the construction team may need to take it back to a certain level of detail or take a few things out so they can go ahead and detail things as they need to, right? So I feel like design is that kind of that point where when the model itself is going through those changes and it's past schematic design, it's into the construction documentation phase. I feel like this is where that again that construction team can step in and kind of help set those expectations of, okay, this is when we want to do handover. When we get to this point, that's when we want to take the model. That way we can go ahead and get a head start on this. We can jump from here to here, and we're not going to have this time of rework, right? But again, it also gets down to communication. And I think that's a huge part of what we're seeing within BIM 360 is it kind of forces that communication with the different teams that are involved.
Exactly. And we're going to talk about this more tomorrow as we talk about common construction challenges in our webinar tomorrow. But we'll
Yes.
talk about addressing rework as well as the communication aspect because in the times of COVID, things have definitely changed. We need to be more communicative. I think that's a
Hmm.
word, communicative.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes. Yes. We need to enable communication further. That's what
there
we
you
need.
go.
Now,
$5 word. Yep.
yeah, I wanted to talk about BIM 360 design here for a second because we kind of said there for a second it's not really construction oriented unless you're like design build kind of thing. Now, I do want to kind of break from that for a second. If you do have a field team that does need access into some of the Revit model, right? It's an interesting thing I wanted to focus on here was, of course, the fact that you can track and coordinate exchange of deliverable packages, right? And you can essentially helps you visualize changes between those deliverables or those packages that you are publishing up to the cloud. So the interesting thing to think about here is that if you have a active model like a central model or a Revit model you've been working on, and field teams need access to some of this model, right? They may not need access to the entire model, or even sub coordinators maybe need access to a portion of that model. This is where we can also use BIM 360 design and that package creation engine in the design coordination or design collaboration module to again create those kind of specified sheets and views, your published settings essentially inside of Revit. You're going to specify exactly what you're pushing up. So when you create that package and the field team goes to consume that package, when they open up that Revit model, it has those views or those sheets in it, right? It's a kind of focused model that they can navigate around again. So making that data navigable and that ease, focusing on that ease of use, and okay, they can navigate between these different ones. This is what they need. This is what we're going to give them. So you're not trying to, you know, drill down through a ridiculous project browser, organization that you have, hundreds and hundreds of views and sheets in. We can kind of specify what data they're getting.
Yeah, and to that point, so earlier you mentioned, pushing field information, install information out to the field as well. So if you're an MEP, you're involved with the design team, you guys are on a collaborated model, right? Work shared model, cloud work shared model. Um, you don't have to uh, change your workflow or create a separate model for the field installers. You might do your details differently for them, but essentially all you're doing is like you're saying, choosing what information you want to send to them, and you can use those publish settings in Revit. Now, another great thing about that is we've chatted with many construction companies that actually create a separate safety model, essentially their own sheets and views, but it's just all about providing safety information, how to manage that aspect of it, but using 3D design data as well. Well, BIM 360 has actually really enabled them here. So they'll use the same design model that they're working in a collaborated functionality, function workflow, but they'll actually, again, save a segment of that model, or they have their separate views and sheets that they're pushing out just specifically to focus on safety as well. So it really just becomes about, figuring out what you want to communicate to which team and
Mhm.
providing all that information. It's pretty cool.
Exactly, exactly. Now, the next portion of this, we definitely need to get into as we get, of course, further into BIM 360 and tying into that field data and utilizing that data within BIM 360. That's going to be BIM 360 Coordinate, right? This is where um, your clash detection is going to take place, the model aggregation, kind of trade coordination here. But essentially, what Coordinate is going to do is it's going to take all of those models from docs, and as they're updated, either in that project file, right, or in our plan files, and we can go ahead and essentially have it automatically clash detect those models. Now, again, tying back to that previous point, we have that version control inside of document management. Well, that rolls forward. Every time that document or that model, the DWG, what have you, is updated, okay, it's going to be updated in the sense of BIM 360 Coordinate for the models here specifically, but you're going to be able to see that you are on the most up-to-date version. And then again, it already clashes it for you. So you just go through that clash report that it creates, okay? And we can go ahead and label those clash issues that it creates as, okay, this is a clash issue, this is not a clash, and kind of helping to write kind of QA, QC, all of that kind of model and that data that we're pulling from it. Now, another big thing that we're going to see here is that, again, we're taking that metadata, right? A lot of times we think about coordination meetings and, you're going to take notes a lot of times and try to make sure that you're getting everything that you need to do. But that's a lot of note taking and a lot of time that you're going to spend just trying to get that data, and maybe you don't get it all, right? In this sense, it's all aggregated right there from each one of these models. You can go in if you wanted to just clash the architecture versus the structural. We can take that information and export it out into a CSV or a PDF format. Again,
Well,
assigning those tasks of the clashes, right? So we can assign that to a certain, individual or team, so they can take those away and we can focus those reports to those teams.
well, it does a tremendous job at this. It takes an 8-hour coordination meeting where we would pretty much focus most of the time on clash detection. And then what it does is it pares that down to where we're only talking about big clashes that haven't been resolved during the week. Essentially, using a meeting of the minds essentially to kind of solve some issues. But what we're doing is, instead of spending 8 hours in a coordination meeting, we're spending half that doing coordination meeting. We're able to have more frequent talks about coordination, but coordination just doesn't become a once a week ordeal. It's actually something that is happening all the time. It's really the core for me, I think, of this whole connected construction component, because that's coordination really is the real first foray for BIM in the construction world. What do you think about when you think about BIM in construction? Well, we think about VDC, we think about clash detection and saving costs because we're able to mitigate issues before we actually do the install. This is the component that actually allows us to automate a lot of that and save time. So our BIM coordinators or BIM managers aren't spending, or VDC specialists, all that sort of stuff, aren't spending an entire day dealing with minute clash detections. Instead, we just focus on the big issues, and the
Yep.
little issues, you can assign responsibilities and they get worked out
Mhm.
in a more timely format.
Yep, I agree. And I mean, tying back to it, in the past, we've seen that typically this is, hosted in Navisworks, right? But again, we're getting that kind of siloed data approach where we receive a model or what have you every once in a while, and then of course it's our turn to aggregate that model, all of those models and that data in Navisworks, and then of course running that model coordination, the clash detection kind of thing, and then essentially going through and creating all of our reports, right? And each time you receive a new model, that's time to go ahead and reach out to everyone else. Okay, do you have an updated model? Let's go ahead and bring them all together. And I mean, there are multiple stages. I'm sure all of you know this, but there are multiple stages in that clash detection kind of process. Um,
What? No.
what? Right. And Navisworks itself can be a pretty big beast to get into, but it takes a while to run through all of that. And if you think about the fact that it's running in the background, it just makes things so much easier in terms of that's something you don't have to think about. Right. Yes, of course, you're going to go in there, you're going to view the clashes, kind of aggregate that data to make sure what is right and what is wrong, where it needs to go. And then filtering by discipline, of course, is a huge key there, specifying what data you're sending out. But another thing I wanted to talk about here is you're going to notice that it says, of course, that Autodesk BIM 360 glue. Well, that's kind of where this coordinate came from, right? And if you guys will remember, we used to be able to create those shared views and publish those with our team as well. You can do that with coordinate, okay? So we're going to be able to, of course, see those clashes, save that view if we want to, and send that off. And remember, if we create an issue within BIM 360, now that we have that issue engine tied together with Navisworks and with Revit, if we have these coordination issues, these clashes, you can take that issue, again, connect it right back into your design program, and it shows you exactly where this is. Now, another great thing about this is if it's coming over with that model data, right, the metadata from Revit in this sense, typically when we see these clashes, they're going to have the ID numbers for those specific families that are clashing. So again, making it easier, not just for, let's say, the construction teams, but also maybe the design teams to navigate to that and get it corrected, right? It's just especially when you have these huge models, searching by ID, or even just clicking on that issue add in there, and it takes you right to that element. It saves you so much time.
Yeah, it really does, allow us to address issues faster, connects the not just the office to the field, but again, that field to the office. Um, this is my favorite tool in the BIM 360 just because I love coordination, but I guess I'm a sucker. But Navisworks is again the workhorse. If you're familiar with Navisworks, you're a power user of Navisworks, you still use Navisworks. This just handles the automation component of it and allows you to still use Navisworks, leverage existing workflows, but work off of cloud-hosted data so that, again, we have that file repository, but allows us to share clashes and coordination issues and all that stuff with, members of the team that aren't necessarily Navisworks savvy.
Exactly. Now, the next portion that we got to go into, this is really, again, where we talk about utilizing that field data, because this is something that is typically, at least in our industry for the past few years, has been a separate or siloed kind of process, right? We would have a separate application or another software that we would get into for creating our checklist, the QA/QC walkthroughs, our safety management, tracking RFIs or submitting RFIs and submittals, and again, that daily reports there, tracking those daily reports. BIM 360 build is where we're going to see that once you activate that module, where you're going to see that capability go back into like docs and getting into all of your different, plans or project files.
Yeah, and we got to show this off a little bit earlier in the mobile app. I think we should show them the desktop component and the way that looks. But there's a huge component of this as we're talking about issues and RFIs, not just for the punch listing side and quality and all that sort of stuff, but also coordination. Providing easy snapshots for people, dashboards, all that fun stuff, so that they can actually look at, and then we can look at that data, how it's changed over time, look at our trends, all that sort of stuff, so we can begin to learn from it. Here we are, we're seeing how the field desktop version, the cloud, the web application interacts with the field, right? So we've got stuff, we want to assign these checklists to people. They're able to deal with these issues and all that sort of stuff from the mobile device. This is obviously an iPad, but when this is synced back to the internet, right? So maybe they weren't on Wi-Fi. As soon as they get back to it, though, it automatically updates, and we're able to keep the project on track and not have to worry about, oh, hey, we're waiting for Joe to submit his PDF or his marked up Word or whatever it is, document, heck, even paper most of the time, right? And then he has to go back to his job, his trailer, and actually type all this up and submit it, or give it to somebody to type up and submit, so that we can actually know what's going on. No, he is out there with the device he's already comfortable with. How many people have a smartphone? I'd say most adults at this point. But a few clicks of a button, you're able to actually perform your job, just walk around like you normally would, and just enter this information in a format that you're already familiar with, and you don't have to do duplicate data entry later. I love that aspect of it.
Yep, I do too. Now, I also wanted to take it back to, utilizing the field data. Of course, we're talking about the checklist, the walkthrough, daily reports, RFI, submittals. That's all important data that needs to be collected and kind of, tracked through the construction process itself. But one other thing that we don't typically talk about, and I wanted to kind of get into as well, was the safety portions or the meetings that happen, right? Knowing who attended a safety meeting and what all was put out during that safety meeting, who attended this toolbox talk in the morning, what did they cover, were there any pictures taken, was a sign-in sheet included with the attachment of it. We can track all of that data in one place, right? That common data environment. A lot of times it's very difficult. The safety managers have their own typical program that they're running off of to pull all of their safety issues or their safety kind of talks, and they're trying to keep track of all of these sign-in sheets on their desk. They've got stacks of them, right, trying to figure out. And if somebody comes to them and says, hey, so-and-so was injured on the site, or is so-and-so here today, we had this happen, we need to know how many people we had on our site today, who was all here. Instead of trying to rifle through a bunch of different papers or binders or folders, they go right into this interface, and all of the data for that specific project is there. So again, connecting the field to the office, and whoever needs that data, it's all being aggregated in this one common data environment.
Yep. So I think we should just kind of got a few more things to cover real quick, and not a lot of time to do it. So let's just jump through, not this, but yeah, BIM 360 layout, right? We want to talk about actually, additional field data that we capture in the field, and then we push back to the office. So, maybe we're talking about using a scanner, and then we scan something. We want to push that back to the office, so that we're not downloading or, for days a thumb drive and giving it to them to re-upload. You can do the same things with the recap application. It syncs to BIM 360. They'll have that information as well.
You can push those RCSs up into BIM 360 docs. Yep. And share that information for anybody. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whether we're talking about scan data, drones, whatever, there's a lot of cool connectivity that happens. But another fundamental component here is layout, right? So we're in construction, we're talking about the structural team doing some layout, the MEP teams doing layout, the wall contractors. Everybody has all this information that they need to actually place in the model. So think about it in terms of this. We put all these models in the cloud, and they're great to look at and create issues on, but how do we actually get to build from it? Well, BIM 360 layout is an application that comes with the model coordination component, which is getting rebranded. We'll talk about all that stuff tomorrow. But what happens is we use a tool called APL inside of Revit, Navisworks, AutoCAD, any one of those applications. We get to place points and then kick it up to the cloud. And then from there, we get to connect our devices, our Android device essentially. For the new version, if you're using legacy stuff, you can use iOS. But it'll actually connect, as you can see here on my application, where I can actually connect the robot or GPS unit or whatever I want, do a quick setup, and actually just begin rocking and rolling doing all my layout. And there's also, the other part of this where we're pushing that data back to the field, right? So we got some as-built information we want to capture. Again, you can do all that stuff in the application and push it back to the field.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, I was going to say one big thing I wanted to also talk about here, Joe, is of course, having access to the right data. Again, we're going to see the plans, project files, right? So as those models are updated, we know the version control is there. They can go ahead and download those models to perform their layout with on site. And as you were saying, they're connecting that robot or whatever it is that they're using
Yeah.
for layout in this sense. Being able to connect right to it, right? And then, as we're going to walk through here in a second, as we're talking about utilizing this data, before we weren't really able to create points or information in the field and then share it back. But in the new version of BIM 360 layout, that's exactly what we can do. If our field teams do need to, let's say, update information or verify placement, taking measurements, or creating points and saying, okay, it was supposed to be here, this is where it is now, or this is where it is, so the engineers can go ahead and validate or verify that the drawing, the design is right, and then move forward.
Exactly. Exactly. So as you can see here, I'm gonna lay out points. We'll do a quick setup. Again, it's very simple. Mine, the small screen here, I did this from my phone. Again, I can connect my phone to a total station. It's crazy. I said import APL points, and the reason why I did that is because it's converting APL points into geolocated issues in the model. It's pretty crazy. But then we can dive a little bit deeper. We can use Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cellular, whatever. We can choose our instrument, like I said. But here you see the wide range of Topcon integration. Topcon, Sokia, same company, same great brand. But in that we have a lot of number of other settings we can change: the international feeds, tolerances, view settings, all that sort of stuff, to kind of tailor this to your standards, right? Not every project is the same. Not every person needs the same tolerances, right? Sometimes we need to be a little more accurate here. But again, we can take care of all that stuff inside of this application. You see all my points there. I have the ability to export. Again, when I can save this back to the cloud, it all gets updated. We'll be able to do deviation reports and all kinds of funky little things to make sure that we're utilizing the data. Again, we just pair the data the way that we normally would pair any other component, right? You just go to your Bluetooth settings, choose what you want to pair in the settings in this app, and set up your instrument. So your rod height, your instrument height, just take measurements up like you traditionally would, enter that information, and away you go. And we can do this on the 2D and the 3D. So if there's no elevations, we can still do layout. It just won't have a Z axis.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And again, I can't talk about how cool this is that you're able to do all of this from just a mobile device, right? Your phone, right? You don't need a big data collector or anything like that. Now, of course, data collectors do work. They are great, especially when they're running on Windows. They allow you to do a few more integrations. But at the same time, if you have those integrations active on your cellular device or the tablet, what have you, you're able to access all of that information the same. So the integrations through BIM 360 are really powerful, extending past just the desktop.
So we have another minute or two before we jump off here and answer any of the questions that have been asked. But just go ahead to the integrations page real quick. I just want to chat about this as we come to a close. So Topcon has been no stranger to the Autodesk side of things, right? We work with DWGs all day long. Design data dictates how we do layout. So that said, inside of APL, APL was actually created by a Topcon and Autodesk dealer. It's an amazing tool. Autodesk acquired it. Topcon, we utilize it heavily here on the TSS side to push data from Autodesk to our field equipment. So what it does is allows us to create an MGF zip file. MGF stands for magnet job file. Allows us to create that file, puts it to our data collector that has the points, the DWG in it, and away we go. Another component to chat about is our, so you're in Civil 3D or AutoCAD, you've got your models created for your machine control, because we got automation not just on the vertical side, right, but on the site contractor side, utility contractor, excavation, paving, all that sort of stuff, all fields in. So how do you convert that data so that your machine control can actually read that information? Well, there's a plugin. It's free with your Magnet subscription. Download it. If you got questions about it, ask us. We'll show you how to use that. And the last one here is my a new one of my favorites, because it's new, obviously. But Dave and I are big proponents of BIM 360. Magnet Enterprise, great cloud technology. We talked about common data environments. Magnet, it has its own common data environment, but Autodesk and Topcon, put their heads together and like, look, we know that there are different common data environments. How do we connect them? How do we fulfill connected construction? Well, we can. There's an integration between Autodesk BIM 360 and Topcon Magnet Enterprise, where your data gets synced between them. You have no data loss, no silo dropped information, all that sort of stuff. And we get to still, track all of our total stations, points laid out, all that fun stuff that we normally get to track in our own Magnet Enterprise dashboard. So with that said, let's bring it up to the conclusion slide. We chatted about all the different ways that we can share data. We chatted about the different file formats that we can share, and then what each module kind of does. But really, at its core, we are providing a common data environment to share data between all teams, not just design teams, not just field teams, because we all work off of similar data sets. We might not be working off the model, but hey, the DWG or the Revit file or whatever it is created the PDFs that we are working off of. We need to figure out a way to utilize that data effectively, timely, make sure that we're on the same versions, all that sort of stuff. This system allows us to do that. Not only that, it actually provides permissioning stuff so that we can kind of lock down the file formats, not just file formats, we can kind of lock down who gets access to what and what permissions they have. As David mentioned earlier, we have read and read write and view and all these different privileges that we can assign to people so that they're not messing with our data. We know that it is secure. We know that they've looked at it. We have a history of it. Like it provides some accountability, and it allows the field to get a say, where they're not waiting, 3 days for an answer to get back to something. Or maybe they forget to ask the question, right? But we get that information on the fly instantaneously because it's all in one system. With that, I think we should jump to questions. Does anybody have any questions? Well, I'm not seeing any questions up here. So with that, I just want to say thank you guys for attending, and gals, for attending today's presentation. If you guys have questions, I know we kind of rushed through that last few slides there, but if you have questions, feel free to reach out to David or myself. Call this Topcon Solutions store number. Again, we're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Hit us up on our webpage. There's forums up there. Any way that you can think to get a hold of us, we're here to answer any questions you guys have. If you need a little more information, want to take a deeper dive into something, how it can work with your situation. Not every situation is the same. Again, hit us up. We're happy to do those deep dives and have those conversations with you. So with that, I'll wrap this up. Thank you all for your time.